Alright, so back here on the 1978 Toyota pickup, and been working on trying to get an adapter plate made for where the existing brake master cylinder was and adapting to the new one. So a couple of problems that I got. So one, these bolts that come through here, they actually mount to an entire assembly that is part of the what holds the steering column in place. And so I got to keep all those bolts and the entire backing plate that's back behind here, and that preserves where the steering column mounts. And so they got to be bolts there, and I got to keep all that stuff. The bolt holes that I need, so instead of those 4 here, I need 2 on the side because it's just, a standard GM style. I think it's from like an S10 or something, master cylinder. So they bolt on the side. And so certainly what would have been the easiest thing would have been just run regular bolts through there so it's held in place, and put 2 holes and mount the master cylinder. And that would have been easy. And of course, nothing is easy on this project. So where that mounts, not sure if you can see it in here, the hole that I need is exactly where this arm is. So that arm that supports everything, I need a hole like right through the middle of that. And that's going to compromise the structure and cause all kinds of problems. And I can't deal with that. And, the hole on the other side would have been fine, but I'd have been basically messing up the structure that I need. And you can see this assembly, it's the whole pedal assembly. It mounts up and then supports the column. And so can't compromise that. And so I had to make a bracket that basically adapts the Toyota style to the GM style. And so this is, a couple hours worth of work. And I'll just kind of walk you through like all the pieces, parts, and how they work. So first piece was making a paper template. And so I just ran a couple of bolts through all those different holes. And when I had the bolts through on the other side, I set the template up on there, and I just put a little bit of paint on each one of them, and then just pressed this paper template up against it, and then I knew exactly where the holes are. And you can see there's a little bit of paint left over on there. And then used a hole punch and made sure that I had the holes for that all in the right location. And those are all the 4 holes that are on the outside here. So drill all those out, and then the next piece is mount this up into onto the cab, and then that gives me the location for where the hole is. And then drill out that hole. And then the next piece is to make sure that you get that lined up properly with where the master cylinder goes. And so the way I did that is I put that on top of here. And then I ran a couple of nuts through on this side, so these were in the correct location. And then took a magnet and then held this bolt in place with the magnet, so then I knew that this was in the right location as far as where it was going to go in the master cylinder, and had a nut on it so I knew that it was in the correct orientation going straight and everything. And then the magnet held that in place. So this hardware actually comes from having a bolt, and then I just took the head off of it. And so a good way, if you ever need to take a head off of something, if you just try to run it, through a bandsaw like this, it'll be at a weird angle. So you won't be able to get a good angle on it, and it's going to want to spin on you. And so you can put this in a vice grip and hold it straight, and then you set the bolt on top of a piece of wood, and then have this riding up against the side of the bandsaw, and then you can push this whole assembly through here, and you can get a nice, tight, clean cut. You see how, there's hardly, anything sticking up there. So it's nice and square, nice and clean, doesn't rotate on you, and then you don't have to worry about this being in a weird orientation as you're trying to slide it through. So that's the whole thing to get the hardware. And so now this piece is what I should have as far as like a final assembly piece. I still need to end up painting it and doing some other things. And so you see I do got a little bit of paint on the back side here because this is all going to be covered up. So I don't want to have, you know, moisture and stuff getting back behind here and this be unpainted. That's going to rust out. So I still need to, you know, I'll knock off the corners here and make that, you know, prettied up. I'll chamfer the edges and everything. Already chamfered on the inside here, so it's nice. So that way you're not catching your finger on stuff, which that's super annoying. And so that'll be painted. I'll paint this, and then I'll take some butyl tape and put that around the outside. So when I stick it on there, it'll be sealed all the way around and then painted surfaces everywhere. So show you how this works. So this just slides over the current bolts. I'll just run in a couple of them. Right. And then I got the master cylinder. That'll just slide in there. And there you go. So now I got, you know, the GM style master cylinder. It's a manual, but it's designed for an S10, I believe, which is twice the weight of what this vehicle is, and it's set up for disc manual. These are strange to try to find. Let's see, part number B10001. Most of the master cylinders are going to be disc drum, which you can use, but then you have to do like a residual valve on here because it will lose pressure in the rear and it'll mess you up. There's also volume related things with, you know, disc versus drum and pressure related. So it is weird to try to look for these, but they did have disc manual brake on some trucks, and again I believe it is for an S10. So this is going to work out great. I got a little bit of a gap here on the back end side, and so I'll end up, you know, maybe grinding down some of the weld here in order to get that a bit tighter. But then I'll end up sticking some butyl tape. That's the sort of gooey, rubbery, weather stripping like stuff, and then I'll put that all the way around the outside in order to get any moisture. As with anything here, you wouldn't put anything on the bottom, and so you would want to keep the side sealed, but you wouldn't put the seal on the bottom because if moisture does get past, like through the little bolt holes or anywhere, you want to allow it to be able to leave. And so when I do seal this, I'll seal the sides and the top but not the bottom. Same thing for the master cylinder itself. So you know, I'll just seal around the top and then not seal on the bottom. Again, if moisture ever did get back behind there, it'd be able to escape. But yeah, this is going to work out good, nice and stable on there, just with a couple of bolts. And now I'll be able to work on the pedal that's going to actuate this. So, all right, thanks. See you in the next one.